Mike. Camera. Action.
I only pull it off how I do it. I mean, look, I could tell you that I've been trying to uncover the abyss beneath my illusory connection with the world. I could tell you that it's all written in the stars. I could tell you that I'm a reverse paranoid. I'm quite certain that the world is conspiring to make me happy, all three of which are true, but it's really a little simpler than that. I like to have fun, man.
All right. Welcome back to the Filmography, the show dedicated to watching every credited film from an actor's complete back catalogue from past debut through to present day in chronological order. Each episode, I'm joined by an esteemed guest to watch and discuss the next entry from the focused filmography and consider how it ranks amidst their career and whether we can trace any typecasting trends or topic traits or theatrical tics. Today, I'm joined by Mike Burton to discuss McConaughey's performance in Harmony Korine's The Beach Bum from 2019. We watch, you listen, and hopefully watch along too. He says, not advising it in any way whatsoever. Mike, you're a good friend.
Thank you.
Just generally, you're an excellent friend because you've given up your precious free time to watch The Beach Bum.
What you mean, McConaughey's greatest performance and one of the epics, one of the greatest films of the 21st century. You mean The Beach Bum, that one?
Yeah, the one that I think I watched the night before you and sort of messaged, I'm watching this now. And then you messaged me 24 hours later of like, I'm half an hour into this. What is this I'm watching?
Yeah, I've got some thoughts, but just for people, obviously a lot of people do like to watch along for a lot of these films. Before I explain fully how I feel about this film, IMDb has got 5.5 and Rotten Tomatoes has 58. I was very surprised by the Rotten Tomatoes one. IMDb hasn't surprised me as much. Well, I looked at IMDb, I was like 5.5. I was like, okay. And then I saw Rotten Tomatoes, like 58. I was like, what? So more than half the people who watch this say this is a thumbs up as opposed to thumbs down. And I was like, okay. And then I saw it was the director of Spring Breakers, and I was like, oh no. Now, I've not seen Spring Breakers because I saw the trailer and I was like, oh, it's Selena Gomez and Vanessa Hudgens post their Disney era in bikinis doing a lot of drugs. That sounds like the kind of thing a 14-year-old boy or a 14-year-old person who is interested in women would watch. But for someone who actually likes movies, I can't really think it's going to be good. And then the reviews were not great. And so I was like, not fussed. But you're much more... Like, I am a film buff, but I think you've seen a lot more movies than I. Have you seen any Harmony Korine movies outside of this
Only film? Spring Breakers.
So it did, just the trailer drew you in then. James Franco being a gangster and lots of women in bikinis. You're like, you know what, actually?
I think it's more... I mean, thank you for that judgment.
I'm obviously joking.
I think it's more that... that was an era that came out, I'm consuming everything. I want to see everything. But also, it was being spoken about as being, a bit controversial.
It was a cultural moment for a bit.
Those two breaking out of the cycle of being Disney actresses and trying to sort of forge ahead with a new career. Obviously, Miley Cyrus had done something similar with her pop career as well. So it was a bit of a cultural moment, I think. I mean, Harmony Korine is a famous provocateur. I don't know how you say that word properly. Hopefully one of those two ways. All his films are meant to elicit strong reactions, opinions, judgments, interactions amongst the community that watch them. So even if you're... Do you know what I mean? They're kind of films that probably if you read a little bit about it, you'd be like, oh, I've got an opinion on that already without having watched it. And generally, I would say that's not something I favour. I think, if you're going to have an opinion on something, you should watch it first. But he deliberately makes films with either subject matter or imagery which are meant to elicit that kind of reaction.
Well, I think he basically wants to be Paul Verhoeven, doesn't he? He's like not because his films aren't like that, but like when I think of someone who really pushes the boundaries, it's Paul Verhoeven. I know that's one of Spider Dan's favorite directors because RoboCop, Total Recall, Starship Troopers, and then Showgirls, and then there's some other films as well. But like RoboCop, Total Recall, and Starship Troopers are undeniably incredible. Starship Troopers is just one of the best sci-fi films ever made, and then obviously Total Recall and RoboCop. A lot of people feel that way about those as well, but they're all saying something, and he pushes the envelope, and a lot of his films don't land, or certain elements of them don't land, but he tries with different things. The way I've described this film and the way I imagine Spring Breakers is like, one of my notes is, this feels like it was made by 3 15-year-old heterosexual teenage boys and then one 35-year-old Grebo dude. That's how this film feels. And this feels like the kind of film where if I watched when I was 14 or 15, I feel like I would have thought, he's Moondog. That's who McConaughey plays. He's so cool. He's so edgy. And then I think if you watch it as like a fully formed human, or at least a semblance of an adult with their shit together, you just go, this guy is the fucking worst. Like, he is not cool. But one of the biggest issues I think I have with this movie is that every single person who interacts with McConaughey's character in this, again, his name is Moondog. It's not a name he goes by. No one ever says, no, actually, your name is Lawrence. No. Every single person dead seriously calls him Moondog. Every person who comes across him thinks he's the coolest guy ever. His daughter calls him great and brilliant. His wife thinks he's amazing. Every interaction he has with a single human being in this movie, they come away going, God, what a cool dude. I'm so glad we interacted with him. What a legend. And I'm like, he's a fucking prick. And he's a complete waste of space. I've been to music festivals in my youth. I've spoken about it on my pod, Genuine Chit Chat, where when my dad passed away when I was 19, I didn't deal with it the best way, and I, let's say, partied quite hard. Okay, I still had a job, all that jazz, but my weekends were very messy. And in amidst that time, I went to certain festivals and hung out with groups of people who got intoxicated in unfavourable ways. And I met a lot of people like Moondog. And when you're in a bad space, or when you're in a very messy and very intoxicated, you're like, oh yeah, being around this guy is so cool. He's always stoned all the time and he doesn't care about anything. As soon as you interact with someone like that sober, you're just like, I don't want to be near this person. And the issue is, this film isn't the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. Just don't get me wrong. There are certain bits that I think on paper sound really funny. But I think the problem is that the whole through line of this movie is you're following this guy Moondog throughout his life. But it's so predictable, and he's so actually quite unlikable. And the entire thing, he's just stoned out of his gourd. And it's not in like a funny, charming kind of Seth Rogen-y Pineapple Express way. Even that gets old and stale. But at least there's like, in certain Seth Rogen films, either he's a complete stoner and it's funny, or he's kind of a dick and he has to learn something, like in Pineapple Express. There is, even though Seth Rogen plays the same kind of character in almost everything, in Knocked Up, in 40-Year-Old Virgin, in Pineapple Express, and in Superbad, he's kind of ish the same character in all of them, but in each one of them, there is a slight flavour of difference. But in this movie, from the start to the end, Matthew McConaughey is exactly the same. And it just gets quite tiresome, I found.
Oh, I agree. I think it starts tiresome and it gets worse from there. I think the second he's on screen, you're like, I know what this is.
Yeah.
Just the way he looks, the way he talks, the way he behaves, it's all just so stereotypical. It's all just so conventional. It's all like caricature. There's no layer to his performance, which is unusual for McConaughey. Normally there is. I can see what probably drew him to it. It kind of feels like the other end of the scale of where he started. It feels like Wooderson from Dazed and Confused, but 20 years later. But as you said, unfortunately, the way that the story depicts it, or the way that I don't think it's his performance, but the way that the character has been written, or whether they've chosen on set to depict the misadventures that he's in, if you want to call it that, the choices he makes all the way through make him increasingly unlikable. To the point where his whole ethos and how he's living his life doesn't even track anymore, doesn't even make any sense. There's one particular scene I want to talk about involving Zac Efron's character as well, where he's not even abiding by his own kind of rules and his own like energy that he's putting out into the world. So I think that, let's go hard early. I think this is probably my least favorite McConaughey performance that I've watched. Of all, this is episode 48 now. I reckon this is the role I've liked him in the least. And he's played serial killers. He's played, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He has played douches. He's played arseholes. He's been in Ghost of Girlfriend's Past, which is an atrocious movie.
Yeah.
But something about him here in this role is so objectionable that I cannot support anything he says or does.
This is the thing, and I also think that McConaughey, as we discussed in Interstellar, is a phenomenal actor. The subtleties he does is incredible. I legitimately, I'm not an actor, I actually think I could do this film easily. 100%. I think anyone could. Yeah. It's as you said from the start, it's the most surface level, skin deep, no depth character possible. It almost feels like, it's weird really, because it almost feels like a student movie. However, the cinematography is actually brilliant. The soundtrack's really good. And the acting, for the most part, for all the supporting characters bar Snoop Dogg, is actually really good. Like, Jonah Hill's alright in this, but like, Zac Efron is brilliant in this. His acting is great because he always goes ham, and I think Zac Efron's quite an underrated actor. He is really good in so many things. But there's just absolutely no substance to this. And it feels like, I think the big issue with this film is it needs to go one of two ways. And what it needs to do is either do a super bad and go completely against everything and be stupid. Like, there's the scene in the courtroom with the judge, and we will loosely go through the story chronologically, but there's a bit with the judge. And I was like, okay, if this point he says something twatty and then she goes, oh, Moondog, and then something almost Lonely Island-esque happened, then I was like, oh, the film is showing that this is fantastical and stupid and not realistic. This is just all silly and nothing is really based in reality. But it's not, because so many things that happen prior and after that are so serious. And so this film is trying to be grounded, but every character is kind of just letting everyone get away with stuff without winking at the camera. There's no Deadpool, there's no Superbad, there's no even Judd Apatow magic where it's kind of like every character's got quirky, funny lines to say. But then it's not a film, which is one of my favorite genres is people movies, where a character has a real arc. So, like, some really dark stuff happens in this film. In the first 30 minutes, I was like, what is this? I literally wrote down, 30 minutes in, nothing has happened so far apart from smoking and sex. 31 minutes in, a car crash, ambulance, hospital, and sudden funeral. And I was like, oh, at the 30-minute mark, we're going to see a change. We're going to see him get really down in the dumps. And it's going to be like a self-destructive journey, like in the Basketball Diaries, or to an extent Trainspotting, or films like that. We have drug addicts who just go into rock bottom and they just can't pull themselves out, and it's self-destruction. And I go, oh, if that's where it went, I'd have been fine with it. Or if it done the super bad thing, gone silly with it. But it just kind of stays in this weird kind of trying to be funny, but not really saying any jokes, but also being kind of serious about stuff, but having no arcs. And I'm like, what do you want? And that's why for me, it feels very juvenile of him being the director, Harmony Korine, being such a provocateur. It's just like, you're just basically, for so much of this movie, to be kind of gross, there's just a lot of tits and a lot of smoke and weed. And that's so much of this movie. And I'm like, it just feels like something teenagers would make, realistically, but shot incredibly well.
yeah, we'll definitely talk about the cinematography because it is amazing. It's interesting because I wrote down something similar about a third of the way in. I was like, okay, now the story is going to start. And then I've deleted that note because no story came about. No, I sort of was like, okay, I kind of get it. Like, we're just having the hangout. We're already going to get to know everybody. The wife character, the Isla Fisher character, she's the one who dies in a very weird way after this car accident. She seems to have no injuries and seems to be fine. And then suddenly, maybe like Padme, she dies of a broken heart. I don't know. But yeah, I sort of thought, okay, now the story's going. Let's get into it. And I agree with you. Like, then just nothing happened. It's just skittish, episodic. It's an excuse to just kind of go on a road trip, isn't it? And meet people. I wrote down a phrase which I sort of had in the back of my head, but then I had to look up what it meant because I knew if I discussed it tonight, I'd make myself look like an idiot if I didn't know. Like picaresque, this sense of like this character who's going on this journey and he's meant to be meeting wacky people, and what's the lesson he's going to learn by the end, and is he an unreliable narrator, and is he likable, and it's that kind of story. And it does do that, but to no avail, to no end. And I guess maybe it's worth touching upon here a little bit about like the making of it. I don't know if you've read much about that.
I didn't. I thought I was going to, and then when I finished the film, I was like, well, actually, no. I looked up McConaughey because I was like, was he actually smoking cannabis in this? And he was doing the joints he was smoking was oregano, but at one point Snoop Dogg like swapped it out, and so there's like a couple of scenes apparently where McConaughey is actually quite stoned.
Yeah, you got, and I was like, as it's known.
Very good. But like outside of that, because I want to see what McConaughey had said about this, and I think he said it was like 7 weeks of just like him almost having like a weird stoner holiday kind of thing. But outside, when I was kind of reading that, and I was like, and then I read a bit about Harmony Korine and him being that kind of director and stuff, and I looked at his other work, and I was like, I've kind of lost the motivation to want to look up this stuff. So I'm glad you have. So I want you to tell me the broad. I mean,
I didn't do much beyond that, to be honest, because I was the same with you. I was like, I'm going to do it because I should for the pod, but then I sort of was reading bits and I was like, ugh, that'll do. I don't need to know any more than this. No, essentially the sense of it just being like that freewheeling sense was that we see on the screen is how it was made. So there was like a 75 page script supposedly, but it was situations and scenarios where we'll put Moondog here and then we'll see what happens. And there was some dialogue obviously and stuff as well. But there was just some interesting ways that they spoke about it in terms of things like, they said, what did they say? It was not improvisation, it was riffing. So we're going to riff together and see what comes of it, man. And we're going to, already I'm kind of feeling out at that point. It was like, we're having no rules on this set, just like everyone can say and do what they want, and we're going to see what happens. And that leads to some interesting moments. There is one interesting aspect to this, I think, in terms of narrative and storytelling, where at times conversations seem to span multiple locations. That's kind of cool, particularly like the McConaughey and Jonah Hill characters. They'll start talking on a golf course, then they'll be in an aquarium, then they'll be in a nightclub, and that's interesting cinematically to see because of how beautiful the cinematography is, but doesn't really add anything other than it's interesting. It's not narratively purposeful. It's just an interesting thing they've tried out. I'm sure maybe they think there's a deeper meaning to it, but there wasn't one that I got from it. So I think they wanted this to be free and collaborative and open and creative, which is fine. You know, you've mentioned Judd Apatow a couple of times. Like that's what his sets were like, supposedly, but still within a clear filmmaking structure.
But Judd Apatow's all comedians. A lot of people from SNL. Yeah. Like he literally, like 40-Year-Old Virgin kind of made Steve Carell's career. Then you've got Knocked Up, Superbad. He was involved in Anchorman as well. Like almost all the iconic American comedies from sort of 2008 to sort of 2015-ish, I think it was. Because I think that 2008 was around 40-Year-Old Virgin. That span, there's about 6 to 10 movies which are all in some way really good. Like Pineapple Express was a film of my youth for more than one reason, but Knocked Up was really actually quite influential to me in a lot of ways. But 40-Year-Old Virgin, I think, is one of the best comedies ever made. But then Anchorman is so quotable and very silly. You've got Apatow is in some way involved in all of them. But the main thing is Anchorman works because everyone on set is a comedian. So they do improv because they're all funny. But in this, no one's really... I mean, Martin Lawrence at points was a comedian. I don't think he is considered one anymore. And then Jonah Hill has become a serious actor, even though he can be very funny. And McConaughey can be funny, but he's not a comedian. Outside of that, there's not any comedians here. If everyone here was a comedian and they're in on the joke, like the Wet Hot American Summer or something with like Paul Rudd and Amy Poehler and all these people, you'd be like, I get it. But there's not. That no one is really a comedian on this. So it's kind of this thing, we're all going to ad-lib and riff. It's like, but none of you are funny. So what are you ad-libbing and riffing on? Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the only person that comes out of this with any kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like without kind of needing to be ashamed of the fact they're in it and their performance in it is Isla Fisher. I think she's the only person who I think comes out with any kind of credit with her kind of reputation intact. You know, you mentioned Martin Lawrence. He came out of retirement for this. I mean, fuck. Why?
to play Captain Whack. And the most
bland role.
Oh, I know. With the worst like kind of ending and outro for his character that you can imagine, just like such a stupid, unoriginal, slapsticky, like very sort of old-fashioned joke that isn't even funny.
It feels like a joke from the 60s. It's like, hey, there's a guy who's obsessed with dolphins, and what does he do? He dives in the water to see some dolphins, and it turns out the dolphins are sharks, and they eat him, but then he survives. And you're like, as soon as he was talking, I wrote down like Martin Lawrence obsessed with dolphins, and I was like, okay, that's on paper that's kind of funny-ish, but you need to take it further because we've seen this kind of thing a million times before, and then it's just, oh, he gets bitten by a shark. You're like, that's the whole thing. This is like a 15-minute segment for that joke. Is that the kind of jokes you get in a joke book that you find in a charity shop? You're just like, I don't need this at all.
Yeah, as you said,
God.
It's not improv. It's bad improv. It's everyone's made the wrong choice, but they filmed it and put it on screen anyway. Yeah, I mean, I know you sort of mentioned that we might go through this in order. What's the point? Like, the film has no order, really. It's just a loose series of skits. It's just McConaughey's character, Moondog. He gets sent to rehab, doesn't he, after the wife dies, and in order to get his money, he needs to go to rehab.
That's a whole thing that we need to talk about that. But I was going to say for the audience, because we're not encouraging anyone to watch this. I don't think anyone has watched it. In the UK, it's quite hard to watch. You can watch it on Rakuten TV. It's got no subtitles. I was like, oh, great. But I'm glad I didn't pay any money for this. But it's like £5 on Amazon or something. I was like, what? But I'd say as a breeze through it, just so people can kind of conceptualize with McConaughey, it starts off and he's smoking a lot of cannabis and he's reading like his own book. And then it turns out he's really rich, but actually it's his wife, Isla Fisher, who's really rich. And he has written this book that got published. He's like best friends with Snoop Dogg, and Snoop Dogg also is sleeping with his wife as well, but they all kind of know and they're fine with it. And then there's the wedding of Matthew McConaughey and Isla Fisher's daughter, and that's a whole thing. And then after that, Isla Fisher and Matthew McConaughey, they get mullered together, get in a car crash, Isla Fisher dies, and then after that, McConaughey / Moondog is just kind of wandering around in various places. Jonah Hill is his agent, trying to force him to like write a book, but then it says that he needs to, essentially, the way he gets his inheritance from his rich wife is he needs to publish a book, and he keeps reading poetry out, and he's meant to be this great poet, allegedly, even though I've seen no evidence of this. And so from the point of Isla Fisher dying at like 30 to 40 minutes through the film, this 90-odd minute film, he then for a period of time is trying to write these novels. He keeps getting sidetracked and distracted, talking to all these random characters, and he basically just kind of weaves in and out of these really zany but actually quite boring characters. He goes into rehab at one point, he breaks out with Zac Efron, that has no consequence. Then kind of at the end, he essentially meets up with Snoop Dogg, who's also super rich and is basically playing himself like he does in every film that Snoop Dogg's in. And then he gets his inheritance by publishing this book that everyone is fawning over and saying it's amazing. He gets $50 million in cash that he asks for, puts it on a boat, gives a bit of it away, sets off loads of fireworks, burns all his money, and at the end is okay. And like, it's weird because there's so much more to it, but actually there's not, because anything else that I've said outside of that is just filler. And that story in itself is not good because it's the story of a waster getting loads of money and then at the end destroying it all. I've seen that in so many films. As soon as he said 50 million in cash, I was like, I don't actually know any banks that would legitimately let you take $50 million out in one go. I don't actually think they will let you do that. But then also, as soon as he does that, take it all out in cash, you're just like, well, then he's obviously going to lose it all at the end and be fine with it. Like, just even you hear that plot point in, was 2019 when this came out. If you had that plot point in the 1950s, maybe it would sound original. But this film is a film that I think when, because Harmony Korine was writing it and directed it, and I feel like he was thinking everything he did was original, but actually it's just every single idea you've seen in another film better. Every single one. The only original thing I think in this entire film is probably Zac Efron's facial hair that I thought was funny. But again, you look at it and go, oh, that's funny. And that's it. That's the whole thing. It's just
inspired by panini sandwich. And like, oh, great, we all get the joke. But it's as you said, it's a one-note joke. There's all surface. There's nothing below that. It doesn't mean anything later. It's not important. It's not like he's deliberately sold it after something. He's got burnt, so therefore, then there's just nothing to it. Absolutely, it's just pointless. And as you said, like the Zac Efron stuff feels like it should go somewhere. They're on the run. The police are after them. They just seem to stop chasing them. Because of that, Moondog starts dressing in women's clothes at one point, and then that becomes like his modus operandi. Like now, he just wears. It's all. And just I was like,
did I miss something?
And
when that happened,
it's when he's on the run with Snoop Dogg's pilot, isn't it? He's like, we'll dress you up in women's clothes so people won't recognise you. I guess that's supposed to be funny. I don't know. Because everything's inconsequential. We're on to the next thing is the trouble.
Yeah.
And the next unfunny thing. Yeah, Snoop Dogg's interesting because Harmony Korine wrote it for him.
Right.
To play himself. And then when he turned up, he was like, no, I'm going to play this character, Ray Lingerie. I mean, Ray Lingerie seems very much like Snoop Dogg to me. He's a rapper.
Even has a musical career.
Yeah, a rapper that grows and smokes his own weed. This all sounds like Snoop Dogg. So I'm not sure what this character is supposed to be. Yes, again, that kind of sums everything up. Like, I've got this great creative idea. I'm not going to be me. I'm going to be this guy. You've just given yourself another name.
And Ray Lingerie is a great name. And that's pretty much the start and the end of what's great about him.
Yeah. It's what words did I do? I wrote down. Let me desperately look for it. Like aimless, pointless. How many S's can I get in? Like
sex, smoking.
Yeah, it's just I can't understand the reason nor the appeal. Like you said, the ratings it's got. It's at 3.3 on Letterboxd. There's some people who on there that are respected reviewers on Letterboxd that are giving it 5 stars.
What?
I don't understand the appeal. If I'm honest, by the time this finished, I was totally tuned out. It was on, but I couldn't tell you that I was watching it and engaged with it anymore. I was gone. We discussed it before. I wasn't on my phone because I'm not doing that I wasn't actively watching it anymore. It was complete passive. It was just going right through me. There was nothing that I was engaging with anymore.
It's kind of finishing it for the sake of it. And I specifically don't look at the time when I'm watching something because I'm like, I don't want to know, a plot point gets ruined. If you're only an hour through a film and something bad happens, you're like, well, something else is going to happen after it. But this, I was kind of clock watching and I was like, thank God it's only 90 minutes because it does a thing which there's times where comedy doesn't work. And the main times comedy doesn't work is when you have things at a certain level and you just keep it at that same level all the time and it never drops. Like the example, Superbad I keep mentioning because that was one of the formative films of my youth. In that film, it goes up and down constantly. There are really serious things in that movie about growing up and there's conflict and then it's really silly and then it's crazy and then it's calm and it goes up and down and it's a really well made sort of teen film in that way. It hasn't aged perfectly. I watched it a year or two ago and I was like, this has not aged as well as I thought it would have done, but that's most comedy, unfortunately. But with this film, there's no peaks and troughs really. Even the scenes where his wife dies, after the funeral, it doesn't even have a funeral scene that lasts that long. The funeral scene's 30 seconds and then you see him depressed for maybe another 30 seconds or minute long montage. And then he's literally exactly the same as he was before his wife died. And he never really mentions being sad again. And I'm like, so you're keeping it at this level the entire movie. So there's no way to be engaged because nothing changes at all. And as you say, and also every character he meets, Zac Efron, Jonah Hill, Martin Lawrence, they're all at the same level of so zany that Jonah Hill maybe a little bit less so, but they're so eccentric and so zany to a degree where it's like these people could almost not even exist because they can't function in this society, which is apparently our real life society. And it's as you say that there's the bits where they make such a big song and dance about him going into rehab because otherwise he'll go into prison. So he goes into rehab and then breaks out in a day, and then he's kind of on the run but not really. And then him and Zac Efron have that kind of bit, which I thought was after Isla Fisher's gone, some of the more interesting stuff was him and Zac Efron, but only because it was a little bit different, even though it undermines his character completely. And then after that, he gets on that plane, flies across the city, and then gets out, and then no one mentions it again. But I'm like, but the whole thing of your inheritance was that you wouldn't get that unless you've written the book. If you're a wanted criminal, which Snoop Dogg mentions to him when he sees him, you won't get your inheritance. You won't get 50 million after breaking out of rehab after a day when you are convicted, when you've also got prior convictions as well. They make a whole big thing about it and then it just never gets mentioned again. Yeah. And again, they had the opportunity for it to kind of be a joke, but it's not. There's no punchline. It's not even a joke. It just kind of happens. And that's what I think the most frustrating part.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's by design. But I'm not saying it's successful. I think everything is meant to be anticlimactic, isn't it? Everything is meant to be anti-establishment, and I think this is what Korine wants to do. He wants to keep giving us setup with no payoff.
Yeah,
but that's just fucking annoying. That's not clever. That's not. It became that every time something new started, I had no will to invest or engage in it because I knew I wasn't going to get any kind of payoff at the end. Or like probably Martin Lawrence is the only one really get any kind of proper payoff with, and it's boring and bland and so predictable and obvious that it's not enjoyable in its own way as well. So yeah, like you said, I think this idea of the stoner guy being anti-establishment, doing whatever he wants, to the point where he can burn $50 million and not care, they think is really cool and funny. And I think they wanted to reflect that all the way through. To me, as I agree with you, it just made him massively unlikable. Nothing was interesting or surprising. This kind of sense of this hedonistic, reckless, carefree character in life isn't charming. It just isn't inherently charming. They think it is. It's just infuriating and annoying. And if that person was in your life, you wouldn't just keep going, oh, it's okay. You'd get rid of them. They'd be gone from your life because you can't function like that. And I wouldn't want to function like that. And I consider myself at times a little bit kind of want to be rebellious and anti-establishment. I mean, not at all, obviously. But in my heart, I feel like I am.
You're punk rock.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
Superman
maybe.
punk rock.
Yeah, I like that. But the person that they want us to engage with and like in this movie just A, doesn't exist, and B, if they did, wouldn't be likable.
Yeah, and my thing, I've one of the things I've written down is like, so everyone is just obsessively fawn over him, which I've already said, but he's a complete waster with wealthy friends and seemingly unlimited resources, which is immediately you're not connecting with this character because they're so wealthy. But you think, oh, they're going to lose it all, and that's where you connect with them. No. And I was like, it's easy to be, in air quotes, poetic and carefree if you can just get fucked all day, every day and have no worries about money at all, okay?
In every sense of that word as well, by the way, yeah.
And exactly, and this is the thing, is that there's so much sex in this movie, but the thing is that when you have characters who are stoners all the time, which happens in Knocked Up and things like that, again, a lot of Apatow movies, one thing that frustrates me is that if you have no money worries, yeah, you could just smoke cannabis every single day from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, because the thing is with cannabis is that when you smoke it makes boredom not exist, really. You are kind of content with anything that happens, to a degree. I'm oversimplifying things, but generally speaking, that's why a lot of the stereotypes and a lot of people smoke cannabis and you just watch like hours of nature documentaries, which you would normally never do, because you can't. I can't remember who it was. It might have been a celebrity or something. It might be Danny Trejo or something, but I don't know. There was someone who basically said the biggest issue with cannabis is really that you can't be bored on it. So when you have young people who consume a lot of cannabis in all their free time, they never have the boredom and then go, you know what, I'm going to write a novel, I'm going to start a podcast, or I'm going to go running or climbing. You're just content to be a couch potato and do a lot of nothing for ages. And I'm not on a tirade against cannabis or anything, but that is one of the factors. Is if you smoke it all the time, that's kind of what happens. You're content with nothing. And so that is not a sustainable lifestyle, because one has to work, one has to function as a human being. You have to do chores, you have to do all these things. But when you are the level of wealth that he is, you have maids, several of them. You have a boat, or even several. You have like a mansion. You have no need to have to force yourself to function in a society to even afford the cannabis you are smoking. So when you have unlimited resources, you don't have to do any chores. You don't even have to cook for yourself. You can just be in this constant state of being stoned. A, it's boring to watch, but also B, one can't connect with that because you can't. Yeah. It's not a realistic thing. You could maybe become a millionaire or even a billionaire and then go, right, I've worked all my life. From here, I'm just going to be a stoner for the rest of my time. But even someone like Snoop Dogg, who is a complete stoner, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Snoop Dogg's music, I get it. He does so much. He had like a podcast before, like in the early days before podcasts were kind of cool. I know he said some things recently that make him kind of a dickhead, but like he is still even being one of the world's biggest stoners, he is so busy. Same as Seth Rogen. So even these characters that they interact with in their own movies, they themselves, who are self-proclaimed stoners, still aren't the kind of character that Moondog is. So it also, even if you are a stoner watching the film, you also can't connect with him, because even stoners need to make money to afford their cannabis habit, which he doesn't, because he's like half of his wife's wealth is 50 million, and that's not including the house. And you're like, that's an amount of money that's like not even conceivable for almost any people. And that's, again, one of the things that's frustrating, because you've just got this, the fun of stoner comedies is like with Seth Rogen, he's almost always poor. So it adds some degree of, I can't get stoned all day because I got to go to this shit job. But he doesn't. Moondog just can float around, and it's easy to be carefree and stoned all the time when you have unlimited resources and it's not engaging to watch.
No, it's not engaging to watch at all. And there are some hints, aren't there, about his past in the movie, like how he ended up with Isla Fisher, and he has written something before. He has some sense of notoriety, doesn't he? People know him. He does some readings that we see at certain points, but it's like he's like down to his embers, isn't he, of his fame. Like, people are losing patience with him, which is why they want this next book. Even that probably would have been a more interesting story to probably the prequel. Would be more interesting, because at least we'd be seeing his rise and seeing how he became who he is. But this kind of perpetual Arrested Development, man-child, perma-stone state, I can only back up what you said, just is not engaging in any way whatsoever. And to echo back to what you said as well, like, McConaughey is an engaging presence in almost every movie that he does, no matter what role he's playing, but just not here because of the character that he's playing and the way I think he is partly to blame, the way he chooses to play it, like the giggle he does. Yeah, well, that is, I know, every time he does it, I was like, oh my God, I want to punch this guy in the face. So I guess maybe it is good. Maybe he had lost himself in Moondog when he's doing that. But for him to be such a charming presence, and to the actor that we've watched for 47 movies, to then choose this and to play it this way, and to think that this was a career move that he wanted to make, off the back of Spring Breakers, by the way, because that's come out, right? So we know all the things that have come out about that. And Harmony Korine wrote this because he basically just kept hanging out in Florida after Spring Breakers and hanging out with all these people. A lot of the people in this movie, other than the main cast we've discussed now, are all just local residents, local people that he just cast in it. So maybe this was a little bit of like, this was Harmony Korine's life and he wanted to represent it. But why McConaughey felt like this was the right move for him at this point in his career, like I said, the only thing I can think of is he felt like it was a bookend to Wooderson. But other than that, I just don't get the appeal of doing this movie whatsoever. You hear him talk about it. You mentioned it. I watched a few interviews with him, red carpets and stuff. He seemed pretty pleased with the time he spent making this. And maybe he enjoyed that freedom to lose himself in a character and to have no rules and to be allowed to play in the sandbox for a few weeks, months. But it doesn't translate into anything watchable for anybody else.
I think this is me being very generalist, okay, but I think there's two kinds of actors. There's actors who are actors, and there are actors who are film buffs. And I think McConaughey, he's a very interesting guy. You know, I've although I don't listen to Rogan anymore for many obvious reasons, McConaughey was on Rogan, one of the only ones he didn't do in person, Rogan. And it was a really, really good pod, and it made me really like McConaughey. It was one of those episodes where I was like, he seems like such a cool guy. Like, the vibes you get from McConaughey through his performance, him being likable, when you hear him talk for an hour or two straight, you go, he is that guy. He is very charming, charismatic, but he is also can be quite serious, and he has some quite deep thoughts. And I think that, but with that, I don't think he's a film buff. And I feel like there's certain actors, and when they talk about movies, they only talk about the experience of being in them. Johnny Depp's a little bit like it as well, but they don't really watch the movies they're in, which is fine. But when you get people like, I know James McAvoy is a massive film buff, right? I know on the opposite end of the spectrum, someone like Kevin Smith is obviously a massive film buff. Seth Rogen is a massive film buff. You get certain actors who make movies, they watch their own movies and watch a lot of other movies. Then you get other actors who are acting, and when they're not on the job, they're trying to almost do everything that doesn't involve movies. And McConaughey, I think he's got a lot of hobbies and a lot of stuff he does. I think he's one of those, and that's not a slight on him in any way. But I think that when you're an actor and you talk about certain movies, and obviously certain actors don't want to shit on movies, which I respect. I don't want people, like, even how shit Cats was. You know, James Corden and Rebel Wilson shitting on Cats. You're like, you guys, like, Rebel Wilson I don't have a massive problem with, but James Corden, you fucking suck. You saying how shit Cats was, that you're partly to blame because you were in it as well. Let's, you know, the people behind the scenes making that film did so much work, even though the film is crap. And it takes away from that. But McConaughey doesn't give me that arrogant impression. I just don't think he cares about watching films as much. So he's just talking, yeah, it was a fun experience. Well, that's fine, but it doesn't translate for us on screen that it was a fun experience.
No.
It translates as something I view as quite easy. If it was earlier in his career, if this was 10 years earlier, I'd say this was a paycheck job. But
More than
because
that,
he's
even. Yeah.
but like, because he's so clearly wealthy now by this point, you think you get a lot of actors, and obviously Elijah Wood and Daniel Radcliffe are two of the poster charts for this, where you do one giant massive franchise and you make so much money from it afterwards, you can kind of just do what you want, and you do loads of weird shit, and I respect that. McConaughey, sort of even probably before even Interstellar and True Detective was at that point, but with Interstellar and True Detective being the peaks, from that point he can really do whatever he wants. And it's just such a weird choice to go, yeah, I want to do a kind of stoner comedy where Snoop Dogg is the kind of the co-lead, but really, or the second billing, where it's made by the guy who made Spring Breakers, and I'm just playing a stoner the whole movie, and I'm like, also by the director who's not a comedy director. It's just, I don't know why he did that.
No, and he's right. And nothing that I've seen or read will give you a straight answer, other than, like, I guess he thought the experience would be worthwhile, and it sounds like he stands by that. But yeah, he's in a weird point in his career. Now, we have had that peak, as you said, the kind of Interstellar, True Detective, the peak of the reconnaissance. We're definitely back in another trough. Last episode was Serenity. Dan and I discussed that, and he came in hot. He did not like that movie, and he was right not to like that movie. It's shit. This is equally shit. So he's making some very strange choices. Maybe it's that he's really just trying to do as many different types of things as possible. Again, all power to you, but it's really not paying off at the moment. His animated movies are being successful financially, but everything else he's doing is either... Well, I mean, the last two movies have been bad performances by him in bad movies, or they're decent performances by him, but in a role we've kind of seen from him before, and in a film which is very middling. So I don't know what's driving his choices at the moment. I mean, I haven't read much from his autobiography recently, because this passage of his career he just skims over. Yeah. I'm going to read it when I do the Gentleman episode, because that's kind of where that part stops, and he talks about this period. But he does talk about the idea of being lost in the work, and the sense of like it becoming a priority for him, and that's really interesting to hear, that he feels like this is him being lost in the work and this being his priority, and he's making these choices. So he becomes very self-aware that what he's doing around now is not engaging with an audience. He's very aware of that. I mean, how couldn't you be, because of the box office and the reviews? But he sort of still is in that passage, like he feels like he's making choices for him. Certainly isn't for me, and it sounds like it's not for you.
The thing is with this film is that, because I did look at some of the reviews on IMDb to see what people were saying, and I think the thing is that if I had to rate this film out of 10, it would probably be like a 3 for me. Now, I've seen... Well, the thing is, right, is the film is objectively shit. I don't care what anyone thinks of watching this film. It is shit, okay? If you enjoyed it, that's fine, but it is shit. I've seen films I've enjoyed less, right? But there are redeeming factors of the film. They're just not what make it entertaining. As we said, like, the cinematography is actually really good. The soundtrack is really good. I like Zac Efron's character. Well, I didn't like him as a character. He's a piece of shit. But I think his performance I quite liked, you know? As we said, Isla Fisher is good. The first half hour, although it's kind of shit, whenever he and Isla Fisher interact, like the scene where they haven't seen each other in a while, and he's just constantly doing cunnilingus on her in loads of random places, and she's like doing normalish things while he's doing it.
She's getting a pedicure, and
like that's quite funny. It's not shot in a way that's funny enough to be worth it, but it is funny on paper, and I think that's what a lot of these things are. They feel like uncooked sketches in a way. So I can see that someone could watch the film and go, I found this entertaining. Or if you're really, really stoned and you watch this, I imagine it's probably more entertaining. It's not a film where I watch where I'm like, it's probably in the top 20 of the worst films I've ever seen. But there are plenty of films I'd probably rather watch this than lots of other films, because this film is just kind of like, it's kind of crap, but it's not like, there's films I've seen which are so bad, I'm like, can this just end? Whereas this, I just had no real feeling for it, which in some ways is more offensive. But there weren't that many scenes where I was like, oh my God, will this end? It was just kind of like, this is just kind of boring me. Whereas I've seen other films, I'm like, fucking, can this just, you know what I mean? So it's in two minds because it is crap. But with the IMDb rating, I can kind of understand that. But the Rotten Tomatoes one is the weird thing, that almost 6 out of 10 people of the critics who watch this think this is a thumbs up. And I don't understand how. I would think this should be a 20 or 30% maybe in Rotten Tomatoes. A very small group of people, maybe just teenagers and massive stoners. Because it's even like, it's actually really quite misogynistic and male gazy. It feels like this movie, it's made in 2019. It feels like it was made in the early 2000s. There are so many topless women in this film, okay? And I am a heterosexual male, okay? Yes, seeing a topless woman is something that in theory I should enjoy. But it feels just so like dirty in this film. It feels like every time Snoop Dogg's there's just loads of topless women, like some of his old music videos. And I'm like, this just feels kind of wrong. There's a scene with him, Snoop Dogg, and Jimmy Buffett, and they're just sat in a pool, and there's just women topless all around them doing kind of nothing, except one of them's like massaging Jimmy Buffett. And I'm like, this feels like such a dude movie without trying to say anything, and kind of like, oh, fuck everyone, I'm just going to do what I want to do. I'm going to smoke weed with Snoop Dogg with loads of large-breasted topless women. And you're like, but why would you do that? Are you a fucking teenage boy? Like, is that what you are now? That's just how it made me feel, and it's kind of gross. And that's one of the things I found. And every time there's a sex scene, it's like, okay, there's another sex scene. Why? Is it Harmony trying to like live out a weird fantasy? Which is, I think you may have been alluding to it earlier. It's like, Hollywood didn't like Spring Breakers because there's, you know, all these women in bikinis the entire film. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do films my way. And it's like, well, you're always shit because you're not that good of a writer or filmmaker, it seems. But there could be breadcrumbs of good stuff in there if you really committed, rather than doing this pseudo fantasy of your own, which it kind of feels like. It feels like he wants to be rich and famous, and Spring Breakers kind of almost made him that, and he's kind of riding the coattails of the opportunities he's getting for hanging out with Jimmy Buffett and Matthew McConaughey and Snoop Dogg. He's kind of like, it's almost like, you know, I have a podcast and it's an excuse to talk to people about stuff I like. It's almost like he made a film and the excuse was, I want to smoke a lot of weed with Snoop Dogg and hang around with loads of topless women, and let's get Jimmy Buffett and Matthew McConaughey on board. So I'm going to loosely make a film about that just so I can kind of do that for a few weeks.
Yeah.
That's the only explanation, surely.
I could buy that. I think, he sees himself as this, you know, anti-Hollywood, anti-establishment guy. You know, I keep using that word. I know I do. But so I think that makes perfect sense to me, that's how I'm going to use their money that they're going to give me. All the topless women is definitely a hangover from Spring Breakers, because obviously the whole woo spring break, you know, wet t-shirt, all that kind of stereotypical stuff is all over Spring Breakers. That just seems to have been carried over. That's the negative thing. I think the positive thing, you've discussed it again there, is the cinematography. So it's the same cinematographer as Spring Breakers, and he's called Benoit Debie. This is a beautiful looking film.
The
use of color and the lighting, the cinematography is too good for this movie, if I'm perfectly honest.
I agree. It's amazing.
It's like in some ways it reminds me of like kind of a Nicholas Winding Refn movie like Drive or Only God Forgives, the use of color in those kind of movies. It's too good. But then when you look at his list of credits, the kind of stuff he's worked on, it makes sense. Like, he does music videos, but the films that he's worked on, he's done some pretty decent stuff with high level quality directors and Harmony Korine. So yeah, I think he's a very talented person. I think he's another person that comes out of this with his head held high, because the work that he's put in is brilliant. Like, if these were stills, they'd be in an art gallery, right? It's just a shame we've got to watch the story, quote unquote, the performances, quote unquote, the action, quote unquote, around it. I mean, we spoke earlier, didn't we? And I said we had to come back around to it. I want to talk about the Zac Efron character. I think you're right. He's probably the top 2 supporting characters, the Isla Fisher and then him. And then again, he's probably another person who's using this as a way to get himself out of certain images that people have of him. So I see why he's taken this role. 2019. I'm not sure where he's at this point, where Baywatch and things like that come out, but he's pushing out the mold that he's been in for a long time, isn't he? So I see the appeal. But once again, like this doesn't understand the world that it's in or the characters that it's depicting, because the moment when him and Moondog mug that guy in an electric wheelchair just doesn't sit with Moondog's whole poetic perspective of the world, and just everybody be cool, man, and let's have vibes, and just everybody love each other, and poetry and beauty and nature, and it just doesn't work. There needs to be some sort of repercussion, some sort of judgment. It needs to be Moondog saying that's not okay, and like now we've got to go our separate ways. Like, but none of that happens. It just that happens as a moment, and then we move on.
Yeah, the whole thing is like they need money. And it's like, we need the money, to go and do what we want to do. What do you want to do? I kind of want to smoke weed, and then, as I've done every second of this goddamn movie, and then just go off and do other misadventures. And it's like, of all the people they could have mugged, and all the people, you chose someone who must be either really old or in some way has problems with accessibility and mobility. Is someone in like one of those scooter things, you say, they smash a bottle on the back of this guy's head, he collapses on the floor, and then they take money out of his wallet and run away. And then, as you say, there's no repercussions, there's no bad feelings, that character never comes up again as like for revenge, or like as a way for Moondog to like apologize and like give him some of that 50 million he got. None of that. And it's this character who, as you say, they act all free love, and when that moment happened in this film, it went from, okay, this is an annoying character who's all free love because the world's been handed to him, to, no, actually, he is a complete piece of shit. And he doesn't care about a single other human being at all. And it links back a little bit when I first saw the car crash scene with Isla Fisher, and she dies, and you're like, oh, this is where the film gets real, and it doesn't. There's going to be some repercussions, it doesn't. And no one at any point points the finger, not even his daughter, to go, you're the reason she's dead, because he is. Because he like fucks off, basically. She goes to find him, then he's like the bad influence and gets her all like high and drunk and whatever, and then I think she's driving him, and then they drive on like the wrong side of the road and then crash, and he comes out of it completely fine, and she dies, and you're like, what? Not a single person even puts some blame on him at all. Even the daughter's just like, yeah, it really sucks, mum's gone. Yeah. Are you okay? Are you okay? He's like the reason she's dead. Like, what are you talking about? And no one ever mentions it again. So that was a big problem for me at that point. I was like, oh, well, that's annoying and shit, but maybe I can kind of get around it. And then that happens, and it kind of doubles down, where almost everyone he interacts with, he makes their life worse, but no one shakes him. No one gets rid of him. Like, you see it, apart from freeing Zac Efron from rehab, and Zac Efron's clearly a horrible person, like Martin Lawrence, his interaction with Martin Lawrence is either nothing, or he kind of is part of the reason that Martin Lawrence could jump off the boat and go and try swim with dolphins and get his foot bitten off. He's the reason Isla Fisher dies. He's
ripping off tourists anyway, so he's not a nice guy, because his whole thing is not really taking tourists out on the proper trip, and not running the tours as they're supposed to be run, and just making money off scamming them, essentially.
And why is Snoop Dogg friends with, like, Snoop Dogg, he's not the greatest actor, and every character he plays, but you can't deny he is really cool. Again, apart from some of the stuff he said recently, which is a real dick move, as a person, hanging out with Snoop Dogg and smoking weed with Snoop Dogg, he's a cool guy, right? So why would he, the character of the character Ray Lingerie, who's basically just Snoop Dogg, but with a cooler name, why on earth would he want to spend time with Moondog, who's like the most bland, waster, stoner guy, who's like seemingly probably older than him, doesn't say anything of real interest in the film, doesn't do anything of interest. He's not even like he deals the weed to Snoop Dogg, which actually could have been the angle that makes sense. But Snoop Dogg just keeps letting him into his life, all because Snoop Dogg is having sex with, or was having sex with, Isla Fisher. But like, after Isla Fisher dies, you'd think Snoop Dogg would just cut Moondog out of his life. But he doesn't. And they have like this weird bro hangout time on the boat. And I'm like, why are you hanging out with him? What time could you spend with Moondog that makes you think you want to spend more time with him?
It's not like he's the life of the party. Like, he doesn't bring anything to any situation. As you said, he just kind of exists because he's so myopic, and the thought of like, what do I need and what do I want to do in this moment? Even at the wedding, it's all about how he can be the show, how he can affect the wedding for the 10 minutes that he's there. I don't get it either. Moondog is just not a likable person at all. I'm spent. I don't really know what to say about that character other than like, I hated him all the way through. And as you said, there were moments where there was a chance for redemption, there was a chance for an arc, and it just kept doubling down and tripling down and quadrupling down to the point where this is what I mean. By the end, I was just like, oh, I just don't care. I was at that point where it's like, I just want this to end now.
Yeah, I did want it to end. And don't get me wrong, I did not really enjoy this film. I've just found other films where I've actively disliked more, I think, is the thing. And I think probably the cinematography and the music softens the blow. I think if the cinematography wasn't that great and if the music wasn't so good, if you had like a really dead average soundtrack and dead average cinematography, this probably would be the bottom. But unfortunately, it's kind of like, if you ignore what all the characters are doing and you just kind of almost, again, it's probably why maybe a lot of stoners like this, because if you don't really pay attention to what's going on, you just kind of lay there zoned out your mind, watching pretty colours and listening to nice music while vague dialogue's happening. Maybe it's more entertaining. But it's, the thing is with the directorial style is that it's that thing which is, it's so many anti-jokes, which is kind of like, you think something's going to happen, then it doesn't. But if you are always doing an anti-joke, it's no longer an anti-joke. It just becomes bland predictability. And that's the only way an anti-joke works, is when the audience thinks you're going a certain direction, and then at the last minute you go, oh, I'm not doing that, but that doesn't happen in this film, because from the get-go, every time a situation is going to happen, it's almost like, oh, we're leading into this way, but then you go, well, I know you're not going to do that because you never do that. Oh, we did this. We subverted your expectations. Like, no. From the get-go, you've always been trying to subvert expectations to so many times, you've actually become predictable by trying so hard to not be predictable. And that's the problem. You have to have a straight through line and have twists to subvert those expectations to make it work. But if you're constantly subverting expectations, you're actually not subverting expectations because the expectations subvert them. It's like going into a movie knowing there's a twist. If you go to Fight Club knowing there's a twist, the twist isn't a twist because you expect it. If you're looking out for a twist, it takes away from it. And that's probably, I think, plot-wise, my biggest issue. So obviously the character is annoying and shit, but I think that because it's trying so hard to not be what you expect, it actually doubles down and becomes so predictable. And then unlike it being like a predictable, warm, like a rom-com, like rom-coms stereotypically, they're quite predictable. But at least they're fun and they're wholesome and the characters are nice. Like Bridget Jones, those movies I think are fairly good for the most part because, yeah, they don't do anything that different, but the characters are charming. It's fun. You feel good when you finish them. And I've seen all 4 of them. Like, they're not the best movies, but they're fun. I see 100% why people enjoy them. I get rom-coms. I'm not the biggest rom-com fan, but I get the purpose of watching it. There's other films that are really dark and depressing, and you watch it, you go, God, that was heavy, but I feel like I've experienced something. And this is just none of that. There's no emotion there because of the glaze of cannabis with no humour. It's just this bland beige grey, the whole film.
Yeah. I agree. Just sandy, blondie, nothing. I don't know where that was going. You can tell I'm starting to run out of steam. Let's start trying to wrap up. I'm going to throw a couple of quotes at you from McConaughey about some of his views on this film. Let's see what you think of them. So something I heard him say in an interview was, Moondog's appetite is other people's indigestion. How do you feel about that?
If that was a character in a different film, if that was like a villain, I'd almost understand. That's how I would almost describe Zac Efron or even Martin Lawrence in this film, or even Jonah Hill's character. It feels like that description would be a character who loves the pain of others. But I don't actually think at any point in this movie, apart from his enjoyment of sex and cannabis, I couldn't tell you a single thing that Moondog likes in any way. because he shows no passion for anything. So it's not even like he's passionate about, if he was just an overt piece of shit, which I think, one thing I forgot to mention earlier is like, this film feels like it's trying to be Scorsese-esque in a sense of like Wolf of Wall Street, right? That's a character who's a complete piece of shit, and he doesn't, I know you, when you spoke about it, he doesn't get the comeuppance that you would kind of want, but it's a rise and fall. Happens in Goodfellas. It's quite a common thing in Scorsese movies. I think in Taxi Driver to a degree. But like, you get a character who's going down to rock bottom, or he's going up and then he crashes down. Those are the kind of characters Scorsese does, and he gets in the dirt of it all, and it's entertaining, and these characters are quite extreme. But Moondog has no passion for anything at all, and he has no charisma. So it's like, how could he enjoy someone's indigestion when he almost doesn't acknowledge anyone else even exists in this movie? Because none of the conversations he have means anything. He just kind of says the same thing to everyone and just smokes weed all around them constantly. Every interaction that he has with everyone is just kind of agreeing with everything they say while just being stoned around them. Every single interaction. So I don't understand that comment at all.
Fair. All right. Got one more for you. Let's see if this is any helps you get into the character Moondog any clearer from McConaughey's perspective. Obviously, he says Moondog is chasing momentary bliss in order to make it eternal.
I mean, I think again, if he was, have you seen the film Filth with James McAvoy?
I have. Yeah, that's when he's the police officer,
who does a lot of coke.
Yeah,
an obscene amount. That
kind
is what.
Bad Lieutenant style. Yeah,
it's kind of. It's a weird watch. I do like the movie. There's a trifecta of films, which for me, it's Trainspotting, Filth, and Trance, because Trainspotting and Trance are directed by Danny Boyle. Filth and Trance have both got James McAvoy in, and then Trainspotting and Filth are both written by Irvin Welsh. So there's a trifecta there of those three kind of films. Filth is quite a hard watch. It's not for everyone. First time I watched it, I really liked it. The second time, I was like, I don't like it as much, but I see what it's trying to do. This film feels like it kind of wants to be Filth, but it's not. Like, Filth is funny and really shocking and actually quite fucked up, but you come out of it feeling stuff. You feel repulsed and these kind of emotions. This film, you don't. And I think with that comment from McConaughey of like, he's chasing that high, it's like, but with most stoners, they're not. It's not like cocaine or MDMA or even like heroin where you're chasing the high. There's no chasing involved to get this high, because getting the level of stone he is just flat. So again, because I think there's one point I think he does a little bit of coke at one point, but then he doesn't actually act any different. So it's just. I'm sorry, McConaughey, if you're listening to this pod, I don't agree. I think you're projecting what you want. Because there's a line in this where actually near the start where I thought was going to show where the film was going to go. And it's when Moondog says to, I think it's when he talks to Isla Fisher, and he says, you know me, baby, I've got to get low to get high. And I'm like, that's actually quite profound. And that's actually why he lives in like squalor and to a degree, and why he hangs out with homeless people and all that. And you go, actually, having all the money in the world and just want to be stoned all the time and hanging out with the dregs of society, that could really be an interesting movie. But they never approach that subject ever again.
No, I don't. Other than, I guess, maybe it's meant to echo what happens at the end. Maybe it's a foreshadow. Yeah, I don't know. Who cares? And I've got I'm going to end before I give the letterboxd reviews. I'm going to end our conversation with my own provocative statement. I can't wait to see what you think.
Oh no!
I wonder what you think about where this might be going. So one of the things I wrote down, I wrote 3 words down, and I wrote them all together in a line, and they became an interesting point I knew I'd had to discuss with you. I wrote down the word stoner, and then I wrote down the word forest.
Oh no!
And then I wrote down the word Gump, and I think this is like the stoner Forrest Gump.
That's funny. When I watched this, I generally thought, I was like, I wonder if Jack is going to dislike this more than Forrest Gump. Do you dislike this more than Forrest Gump? I know Forrest Gump is longer. You think they're the same?
I honestly do.
You baffle me. When was it? Out of interest,
the same movie. It's a guy on a road trip meeting zany characters in crazy situations with cameos by actors.
Couldn't be more wrong.
When
was the last time you watched Forrest Gump? Just to check.
I'd have to look at my letterbox, but
because like have you only seen it like 2 or 3 times in your life? Is because there's certain films where I find when people are real haters of movies that are really good, usually they watch it once and it's overhyped, and they watch it again, it reinforces their hate, and then they never touch it again, and then their own mind reinforces their own hatred of it. Because in What Went Wrong, the pod that reintroduced me to, they both had that thing where they tackled Forrest Gump, and they both said, I really wasn't looking forward to this. I remember everyone was just going crazy about it, and it's not even that good, and it's really reductive in this way, and all the points you've made. And then after rewatching it, they went, most of my criticisms don't actually land anymore. I'm kind of remembering certain bits differently to how they were. There are still flaws in the movie, but actually, most of the issues I had, there are scenes I remember being really long, and actually they're only like a minute or two, and they're quite inconsequential to the wider plot. I'm not saying if you watch Forrest Gump, you're going to love it, but there are a lot of films I remember hating, and then I re-watch and go, I don't hate this at all. I'm just...
That's an interesting argument, yeah. I last watched it in 2022.
This was quite recent, to be fair, 4 years ago. Yeah. And you're an adult now, so you can make your own decisions. It's one of the... I know that the kind of the running joke, especially between you and I, is the big disagreement we have is I think Forrest Gump's one of the greatest films ever made, and you hate it and think it's one of the worst. The thing is that with Forrest Gump is that, technologically speaking, obviously did incredible things with the feather, which is CG, as well as like him being put into like historical footage and stuff. The film's very clever. It's like every genre at once, which I understand can be exhausting for people. But I think Forrest Gump is a wholesome movie. It's trying to say something that's not... It's not really that political. It is a simple man on his journey. And he is a good person at the end of the day. That's his whole thing, okay? Yeah, there's a representation of whether or not his mental state, and I think some people have reclaimed it as is he neurodivergent instead of just being dumb. But at the end of the day is the film, I like it so much because he is a good person. And he just has a lot of these things happen to him. And he goes to this horrible war and he watches loads of his friends die. And so many people had to experience that. And that's really tough. And he has to like use that to keep himself going. The Bubba Gump thing is so nice. He brings out the best in Lieutenant Dan. He even brings out the best in Jenny in a lot of ways. When his son does really well in school, it touches him and he's really emotional about it. He gives so much of his money away. Like, he goes for a run, it inspires like thousands of people, and it's just because he needed to go for a run to process all of his mum dying and things. And there's so many layers of him either just living his life or just being a good person, and the massive positive impact that has on the world around him and how beautiful that is and what lessons you could learn from that. And in this film, it's the complete opposite. It's a complete piece of shit character who doesn't care about anything around them, and his only goal in life is to sleep with people and to smoke loads of cannabis. And that's it. So although you could draw the lines of, yeah, there's some cameos and stuff like that, a lot of the actors in Forrest Gump, it wasn't a cameo. It wasn't them being, we've got this big actor in. It was actually just working with Robert Zemeckis at that point in his career was quite a big thing to happen for them. And since then, it now seems they were big actors, but it's kind of almost retconning their own involvement, I think, with that. I'm obviously very passionate about Forrest Gump. And if people don't like Forrest Gump, that's fair. But I think it does a genuine disservice to what the core values of the movie is. And it's not perfect. But at its core, it's a wholesome movie that is trying to do its best. And I think it lands most of the time. Whereas this is the antithesis of that. Harmony Korine is not trying to make a wholesome movie. He's intentionally trying to be provocative for no real reason. And it adds nothing to pop culture or to cinema. Whereas Forrest Gump's one of the most iconic films ever made, whether or not you like it. And I think that it's a genuine disservice to be so hard on Forrest Gump, because it's iconic. Whether or not you enjoy it, you can't change the fact of what it did and what it means, in my opinion.
All I can say is I'm glad for this podcast and for that beautiful speech from you that I made that comparison. It's the most... it almost is worth sitting through the 90 minutes of the shitty beach bum in order just to hear that from you. So thank you.
I did have a feeling you would bring it up, weirdly enough, and I was like,
isn't that funny?
I was like, I bet he's going to fucking mention Forrest Gump. So I was almost primed for it. I was like, I was, but I think you can, for any people movie, you can say, you can make the comparison to Forrest Gump in some ways. A, because of the influence of Forrest Gump, but also because Forrest Gump is it's in so many genres, and it's kind of so much of everything and not enough of everything at the same time. I feel like, apart from probably action and superhero films, you could frame a lot of movies in, it's just the Forrest Gump of this, because it's so many scenes of it are just so kind of everywhere in a way. You know, everything everywhere all at once. That's just a kung fu action Asian Forrest Gump. So it's not really, but actually it's multi-generational, and there's so many different genres of it, actually, and it does all these weird different things that push the boundary of cinema. Like, you could kind of frame a lot of movies with the lens of Forrest Gump, and I think you knew that when you said that.
Yeah, I don't even remember the first time we did a podcast together. I'd also listened to a lot of yours, and I think we were in each other's worlds, but like, and I said to you, like, after we recorded, I said to you, all I really wanted from this conversation was to get a mic. I don't know if you remember that.
I do, yeah. I think when I say and I'm editing my own pods, I often think of you saying that.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I wish I could give you a mic to that, but I'll let it ruminate. And if it comes to me, and if I feel like, you know, you've moved me in some way later, I'll message you offline.
It's fine. I don't need to convince. I respect your opinion on so many films, but there's no one I've ever met who I agree with them on every film. There's very good friends of mine who agree on everything, and then they go, yeah, but all superhero films are shit. And I'm like, but they're not, though. That's a very dude bro-y, annoying, I'm into film opinion to have. But most of my friends who have that opinion aren't actually that into film anyway. And there's lots of just, you know, I hate The Descent. That's my controversial film take. I fucking hate that film. I think it's shit. No slight to the director, but I only watched it once when I was younger, and I just thought it was predictable and boring. And I thought the first half an hour is amazing, and then fucking gremlins show up, and then she falls into a bloodbath and starts killing them all, and it's shit for me. But that's probably my most controversial film take, is I don't think The Descent's good. Whereas yours is Forrest Gump. You know, the only more controversial films, probably the only more controversial ones you could say is that Shawshank Redemption is terrible. I think even if you said The Godfather's terrible, I could agree with that more so than Forrest Gump, because I watched The Godfather for the first time a couple of years ago, and I was underwhelmed.
Yeah,
it was all right. But again, it's a film of its era, and it was iconic when it came out. But I'm a Forrest Gump diehard. One of the very few films I rate 10 out of 10. Very few films.
It's just the beach bum of gangster movies, isn't it? That's all it is. The guy on a journey to a gangster lifestyle.
One day I'll have you on and we'll do a revisionist history of Forrest Gump. One day in the ethereal future, I'll make you rewatch Forrest Gump, but we'll do tons of research and I'll try and force my opinion upon you. And we'll have a big debate about every aspect of it. And you'll say all the stuff you hate and I'll say all the stuff I love, and we'll come away from it going, my opinion's completely unchanged.
Sounds like fun though, to be fair.
It does.
The talking part, not the watching part.
Oh yeah, of course. Such a contrarian. But at some point we also said maybe in the break after McConaughey, before you do the next one, we did say about doing Project Hail Mary as well, because I did watch that, and that was a banger. So
good.
But it depends, because obviously I have no indication of who you're choosing next. I imagine it's not going to be Ryan Gosling, but if it was, then obviously we won't do a whole pod about Project Hail Mary. He would be quite interesting to do, though, even though I think most of his roles he's really average. He's average, but he's in so many good films. Like Drive is amazing, but he barely acts in it. But that is kind of why it works. You know what I mean? It's I don't dislike him in any way. I think he's probably a cool guy, but I don't know I've seen a film with him in, apart from probably Barbie, where I'm like, God, he's a phenomenal actor. And I've seen him in quite a lot of things.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that's my hot take, maybe. I do like Ryan Gosling, but seeing him in a film doesn't make me want to or not want to watch the movie. It's like a neutral thing.
Yeah. He is one that we're really good to do. I just obviously, as you know, and everyone that listens to the podcast knows, I'm loath just to do another white guy. So,
which is fair.
He might be down the line at some other point, because he has got a really interesting, varied career, and he has done a lot of different types of movies.
Yeah. But, you know, you've got to do this pod forever. So, you know, it's not just, you're going to be doing this, I'm going to force you. It's like I'm going to force you to rewatch Forrest Gump for the next 40 years. So you've got plenty more filmographies. I've been obviously on Patreon. Megan and I have been doing some of the Tom Hanks rewatch. It's just we're in the prime of him but all the films are really long. So it's taken us like a year and a half to just watch like 2 films of his, even though they're incredible. But it's one of those. I think regardless of your opinions on Forrest Gump, I think he probably does have one of the strongest filmographies, I'd say.
Definitely.
Tom Hanks. He's just, everything he does, even the ones that aren't that great. Like Joe vs. the Volcano is a weird film, but it's a bit different. So it's no beach bum.
Yeah, it's no beach bum. Okay, should we do a couple of letterboxds?
Let's do it.
All right, Sam, he says, Matthew McConaughey's best performance is Interstellar. No, it's True Detective. No, it's this film. Of course it is, because he throws himself so far into Moondog, I can't see him as anything else now. It's a top quality comedy which features so much chaos and poetry. It's utterly brilliant, and I didn't expect to love it so much. There's no big ethical message about drugs or anything. It's simply a ride through transcendental material, and if I'm ever the same age as Moondog, I hope to be as cool as him. Also, what a soundtrack too. I feel like it features every song I've ever liked.
I mean, saying it's featured every song you've ever liked, I think there's only about 5 songs in this. A lot of it, I think, is OST. So I think this person has probably quite a shallow music taste. I think I've listened to more songs today than are in this film. You know, it's not Trainspotting or Pulp Fiction. Like, the songs are cool, but I couldn't tell you what any of them sound like. They just fit the vibe. No, that's my...
Fair enough. I thought it was quite illuminating there based on our conversation. It's like when they say, if I ever get to be the age of Moondog, and considering you spoke eloquently about the idea of this being kind of a teenage boy's wet dream, and stoner teenage boys would probably really enjoy this, I think that might be quite telling on who that reviewer is.
I think when I was of a certain age, shortly after Dad passed away, there were definitely certain movies I watched in certain states that I think, if this was one of them, I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more than I did as a very sober 32-year-old, new dad. I mean, I'm not a sober person, as in I haven't been intoxicated in a long time on anything, because obviously I've got a 6-month-old. So if I'm lucky, I'll have a little tiny dram of whiskey every now and then. That's about as crazy as I get now.
That's just the bit that doesn't make it into the bottle, right?
I wish.
All right, Zachary, have you ever had a friend get inebriated and spend too long explaining to you why a given episode of Rick and Morty is a brilliant piece of writing? This movie is like talking to that guy about life and shit for an hour and a half. The photography is pretty, McConaughey is committed, but otherwise it's super flat and tonally disjointed. I can't quite grasp the vibe people like here. Almost feels like I'm being mocked for trying. Maybe that's the design, the joke, I don't know. I didn't feel it. Bummer.
Almost every episode of Back to Filmography you do, there's one review which perfectly encapsulates, because you often agree, for most of them, you often agree with your guest on generally the vibes of the film and how you guys rate it. This was the iconic, succinct Back to the Filmography. That's really what we've been saying for the last hour and 15 minutes, very succinctly.
Yeah. I think nailed it completely. Just a bit, of all the people, I don't want to bash McConaughey, but fine, he is still committed, to be fair to him. I just didn't like what he committed to.
I just think anyone could commit to this role. I just think this is probably the easiest role I think anyone could do. Like if there's probably a few like really people who are like on the straight and narrow, probably quite conservative types who've never done any drugs, never drank any alcohol, never like been to a festival or a party where you meet, like I think most people probably in their teen years or gone to college or university have probably at one point in their life or another met someone like Moondog or known someone who's someone. We've kind of all known a Moondog. Hopefully you guys aren't Moondogs, or at least aren't anymore. But I think that all of us know this type of person. And I think we all know wise enough to not be that and not really associate with that kind of person. And I think that the role is so shallow, anyone could actually do it. I think playing any other character in this film would be harder than playing Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg, playing Moondog. So I was looking on my notes and I see the word I've written Snoop Dogg question mark right at the start.
It wasn't hard for Snoop Dogg either because he was just playing himself. So I like that.
I think me playing Snoop Dogg would be quite difficult in more ways than one, but me playing Moondog would be quite easy.
Yeah, fair enough. Oh, we just bought. I just hadn't thought about this before. Like Snoop Dogg, Moondog, and we've got the characters playing them. That's quite interesting. In terms of white guy playing
interesting
Moon.
The film.
Yeah, fine. Surprises then. Is this a classic in McConaughey's filmography? Is it worth catching? Or is it truly and only for completists only?
For a messy McConaughey, it's completists only. And it's one of those films where, like, I would almost not even say for completists. I'd say I'd never heard of this film. When I searched for this on Rakuten TV and on Amazon, you type in beach. Obviously, there's the film The Beach with DiCaprio. I really like that film. I know it's quite divisive. I actively really, really like that movie. But you type in beach, it doesn't come up. You type in beach space B, it still doesn't come up. You actually type in the words beach bum, and it's like the 4th or 5th film. Yeah. So even directly trying to find the movie, the search engine you use is also trying to not show you the movie, which I think is quite telling of just this film adds absolutely nothing, really, of any substance apart from me probably thinking Isla Fisher has the potential to be actually quite funny. She had if she was in it more, the film would have been better. She's the best part, and they cut her out of it.
Agreed. Yeah, they fridged her, sadly. Work of substance that is very enjoyable to listen to is your recent project with Dan covering the Food and Wales Festival. That's coming to a close around the time of our recording. By the time this comes out, it'll probably have been all episodes have been released, including all the interviews, I assume. So what else what else have we got to look forward to / what have people just been enjoying that have been coming out over the last couple of months?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier on the pod, doing a little self-plug, is I do Genuine Chits Chat, which is my main podcast, and I've been on a hiatus from that because, as I mentioned, I have a baby, and so I just haven't had the time to do as much podcasting, but I've got quite a few things recorded. I think I mentioned this in Interstellar. So this is coming out later in this year, sort of mid 2026-ish. I will have released a few more things here and there, but I did come off my hiatus to release reviews from the Forbidden Worlds Film Festival. It's a genre film festival in Bristol that myself and Dan were lucky enough to be on the press team for. We did it in 2025, we did it again in 2026. Dan also did it in 2024 as well. But he didn't invite me then, so... But basically, there's like 15 films usually shown each weekend of the festival, and me and Dan review almost all of them. We do need a little bit of a break. So 2026, we reviewed 13 movies. Half of them, 7, are on his pod, Spider Dan the Secret Bores, who's obviously been a guest on this show quite a few times, and the other half, 6 of them, are on Genuine Chits Chat. They're all only about 15-20 minutes-ish for the most part, and there's quite a few ones you would have heard of, like Clash of the Titans and Excalibur, but there's quite a few you'd have never heard of, and it's just a good mix, and we kind of spoil them a little bit, but they're worth listening, so it'll kind of widen your film horizon. So I imagine anyone listening to this would probably quite enjoy a lot of those. So they're on Genuine Chit Chat, and then I also was on Spider Dan's pod. We spoke about The Abyss, which is James Cameron's movie, which it's weird because a lot of people in the UK have never seen it because James Cameron refuses to edit a certain part of it, and the BBFC are sticklers for that on him, but not on films like Cannibal Holocaust or any Disney films that have overtly had animals harmed, which we talk about. But we talk about quite a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff in The Abyss. You can't watch it on streaming, I think, almost anywhere in the UK, so we had to order DVDs from like Germany and Spain and watch them here. But it's a really good movie, really good James Cameron movie. There's some faults to it, but the behind-the-scenes stuff is crazy. So listen to that podcast as well. There'll be a few bits and pieces I'm doing, but if you follow me at Genuine Chit Chat, you get to see a few things what I'm doing on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. I'm doing a few bits and pieces. You get to see what I'm doing on my story, but it's a good place to see clips of stuff I'm doing. And there's a lot of clips from Forbidden World Film Festival that Dan's been doing on his side, and then I'm going to be doing on my side soon too. So lots of film stuff, which is very apt for me coming on here. But this might be my last appearance on Back to Filmography for the McConaughey's. I think you've probably got everything else filled up, haven't you? Yeah, there's not that many more films, are there?
No, 10? I've got five episodes. No, 5.
Is that it?
That's all I've got. And then the wrap-up episode. Yeah, so
bloody hell,
we're right in the right towards the final stretch now. Yeah.
Wow.
It might
awesome.
turn into one more, I suppose, because if his next film comes out.
That's the big one you're
before-
excited about, isn't it? That's the one where everyone's hoping it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, so I think that might be coming out around late summer or at the end of the summer. So we'll see if that gets out in time before I get to the end of my run, then I'll squeeze that in as well. But yeah, so it's been fun.
Yeah,
it's been all right.
I look forward to seeing who the next person's going to be. Then that's what I'm really excited for. Very hyped to see who you pick, and then who I can weasel my way into. Which episodes I can come on. Films where I'm like really excited to watch, like Interstellar, and like The Meg with Jason Statham, and then other films that are kind of like sleeper hits, like Collateral, and then other films like Glory Days and Beach Bum, which are films.
They are films. And you've always got something intelligent to say about said films, so I appreciate your time, mate.
That's now 2 for 2 in a row. Films which my smart, media-savvy guests have rated lower than worth catching. You could say they've been snooped. I say that I have good film friends, anti-moondogs if you will. My genuine thanks to Mike for allocating a chunk of his precious free time to this absolute bummer. And my thanks to you two listeners for your continued support, engagement and participation as we journey on through the reconnaissance. That was The Beach Bum. Next up in a fortnight, I'm going to be joined by Matt Rogers to discuss Eminem in something completely different in a show that breaks from format, as we discuss Between Two Ferns the movie, for those that are watching along. Until next time, be excellent to each other and make sure you take the time to treat yourself too. I am Jack signing off. Yippee-ki-yay, movie lovers.
You just gotta keep living, man. Livin.
Cut.